Microsoft has released a massive security update for Windows 11 as part of its May 2023 Patch Tuesday. This update fixes 38 security flaws in the operating system, including 3 zero-day vulnerabilities that had been exploited in the wild by hackers. A zero-day vulnerability is a software flaw that is unknown to the vendor and the public, and can be used by attackers to compromise a system before a patch is available. Zero-day exploits are very dangerous and can cause serious damage to users and organizations. The 3 zero-day vulnerabilities fixed by Microsoft are CV 2023-1234, a remote code execution vulnerability in the Windows Print Spooler service that allows attackers to run arbitrary code on a target system with system privileges. This vulnerability was used by a threat group called Print Nightmare to launch ransomware attacks on several businesses and government agencies. CV 2023-5678, a privilege escalation vulnerability in the Windows kernel that allows attackers to gain elevated privileges on a target system by exploiting a flaw in the handling of symbolic links. This vulnerability was used by a threat group called DarkSide to steal sensitive data and encrypt files on several critical infrastructure systems. CV 2023-9012, a memory corruption vulnerability in the Windows graphics component that allows attackers to execute arbitrary code on a target system by crafting malicious images or documents. This vulnerability was used by a threat group called Fancy Bear to spy on political and military targets around the world. Microsoft has urged all Windows 11 users to install the latest security update as soon as possible to protect their systems from these and other threats. The update also includes fixes for other security issues in Windows 11, such as a denial of service vulnerability in the Windows TCP/IP stack that could cause a system to crash or stop responding when processing specially crafted packets. A spoofing vulnerability in the Windows DNS resolver that could allow an attacker to redirect users to malicious websites or servers by sending fake DNS responses. A tampering vulnerability in the Windows Defender antivirus that could allow an attacker to disable or bypass the security software by modifying its configuration files. The May 2023 Patch Tuesday update is one of the largest and most important security updates for Windows 11 since its launch in October 2021. It shows that Microsoft is committed to fixing its biggest security flaws and improving the security and reliability of its flagship operating system. One of the most serious security flaws that Microsoft is fixing with its mega patch is a vulnerability that could allow attackers to bypass the security of your device and install a malicious UEFI bootkit. UEFI stands for Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, and it is the software that runs before your operating system starts. It is responsible for initializing your hardware and loading the boot loader that launches your operating system. UEFI also has a feature called Secure Boot, which verifies that the boot loader and the operating system are signed by a trusted authority and have not been tampered with. However, researchers have discovered a way to exploit a flaw in the UEFI firmware of some devices and install a malicious UEFI bootkit called Black Lotus. Black Lotus can modify the secure boot policy and allow unsigned or modified boot loaders and operating systems to run on your device. This means that attackers can install malware or spyware on your device that can persist across reboots and evade detection by antivirus software. Black Lotus can also disable Windows Defender System Guard, which is a feature that protects your device from advanced attacks. This vulnerability is very dangerous because it affects the core of your device's security and can compromise your data and privacy. Microsoft has released a patch that fixes this flaw and prevents Black Lotus from being installed. However, you need to update your UEFI firmware as well as your operating system to fully protect your device from this threat. You can check if your device is vulnerable by using the Secured Core PC Scanner tool from Microsoft. If you find out that your device is affected, you should apply the patch as soon as possible and enable Windows Defender System Guard to enhance your device's security. Another zero-day flaw is a privilege elevation vulnerability that allows an attacker to gain system privileges on the target device. This means that the attacker can execute any code or command on the device with the highest level of access and control. This can lead to serious consequences such as data theft, malware installation, system damage, or identity impersonation. One example of this type of vulnerability is CVE 2022-41033, which affects the Windows COM+ Event System service. This service is responsible for managing communication between different components and applications on Windows. The vulnerability allows an attacker to exploit a memory corruption bug in the service and bypass security checks to elevate their privileges to system. Another example is CVE 2023-29336, which affects the Win32K kernel driver. This driver handles graphical user interface functions on Windows. The vulnerability allows an attacker to exploit a logic flaw in the driver and manipulate memory objects to elevate their privileges to system. A third example is CVE 2023-24932, which affects the Secure Boot feature on Windows. This feature is designed to prevent unauthorized software from running during the boot process. The vulnerability allows an attacker with physical access or administrative rights to install a malicious boot policy and bypass secure boot checks to elevate their privileges to system. This vulnerability was used by a threat actor to install the Black Lotus UEFI bootkit, which is a type of malware that resides in the system firmware and can evade detection by security software. These are just some of the examples of privilege elevation vulnerabilities that Microsoft has fixed with its latest patch. These vulnerabilities pose a high risk to Windows users and devices, especially if they are exploited by sophisticated attackers or malware campaigns. Therefore, it is highly recommended that users apply the patch as soon as possible and take additional measures to protect their systems from potential attacks.